Hi, everybody. Really can't see any of you. Oh, I see a few of you in the Zendo. Yes, you're very tiny though, in contrast to how we do it at our Zen Center. But I see
If
you,
you'd
and
like to, you could go to you could pin them on your screen if you'd like, and then you could see them. Uh,
oh, that's better. Oh, thank you, thank you. So tonight, as uh, he said, as Kodo said, I'm going to be talking about my third book, which is called uh, Enlightenment as an Accident, Ancient Wisdom and Practices to Make You Accident Prone, which sounds like a kind of a clever title. I wonder where that clever title came from. um, so you can't do it. You can't do it. You have to die to everything, even in the idea that you have to die. But you can make yourself accident prone. Period. Period. Of course, I have a lot to say about that, but you can make yourself accident prone. And tonight I'm going to talk about three phases. Uh, the settling in phase, and then the stumbling toward enlightenment phase, which is the hard work phase, and then the falling awake phase. And we'll see how much time I have to do falling awake, but we'll see how it goes. So the settling in phase. Some of you have settled in. You've found a teacher that you can resonate with. There's no ideal teacher, but you need a teacher, a mentor that you can resonate with, who can help you see through your limitations, help you see beyond your persona, your self-image that you carry around, always worrying about whether you're doing okay and how you're appearing to others and all that stuff. A good teacher helps you just see through those limitations in a gentle, open way, um, without out, out really trying to destroy your self-image. We need self-images, but if we carry them around, they prevent our sense of intimacy with each other and the world. And without that feeling of intimacy, there can be no accident of opening up to big mind, to the enlightened mind, which is our true mind. So Huineng says, the sixth ancestor, if you reflect on your own true face, the secret will be found within yourself. If you reflect on your own true face, the secret will be found within yourself. And Basho says, year after year, a monkey's face wears a monkey's mask. So often, again, we're caught by this two-dimensional reality that we exist in because we're always comparing ourselves to other people or to our own image of what we should be. But we can let go of that monkey's mask, and that's the practice of settling in. It's the practice of aspiring to that without being grabby. The best teachers will emphasize how we need the aspiration, um, and we also need to just practice right here, just to be right here. Not even practice, just be alive right here. So the best teachers emphasize what I call dot practice and line practice in my book. Um, and Suzuki Roshi, my teacher for the first 5 years of my practice, uh, railed against step ladders in because he saw step ladders in as being just line practice. You're trying to get somewhere. And as long as you're trying to get somewhere, you miss the possibility that right here in the middle of whatever is happening is a wonderful, spacious reality. And I tell a story in this book. I may tell it in one of my other books too, about being with him and deciding I wanted to go to just practice uh, Zazen in Japan, and trying to find a monastery where they did a lot of Zazen, because I didn't want to hang out with the tourists. I didn't want a lot of processions or rituals. I wanted to just do core Zazen, just core meditation, so that I could prepare for the wonderful accident of enlightenment. Um, so I was shopping around. I won't say that sounds kind of frivolous, but I was looking around, contacting different monasteries, and he had not encouraged me to do this, but I just did it anyway. And uh, uh, I found a monastery that looked pretty good, but I was still comparing it to others. And I was having breakfast with him one day, and in his little nook, breakfast nook, where he had raku pottery on the shelves. And raku pottery, as many of you know, is a Japanese form of pottery where the flaws are baked in, the lines, even everything's baked in. And he said, if you try to find the best cup pointing to the wall, you will never appreciate any of them. So that's all he said to me, and I ended up not going to Japan at all, and just staying with his, I guess, somewhat flawed cup, although it didn't seem flawed to me. I just wanted to do more Zazen because I wanted to break through this Tim crust, and I thought if I really did more, we didn't have that much those days. This was just the beginning of the Tassajara Zen Monastery, 1967. So he was concerned that I was forgetting dot practice, just practicing with this cup, just being alive with this cup, and noticing its beauty, noticing its wonder, and just drinking out of it, which is part of our practice, part of our lives. Our lives go by so fast, and we miss just being here with each other and with our deepest self, which is the self of the universe. And I also talk in this section about spiritual bypassing. Those of you who are in the audience, raise your hands if you know what spiritual bypassing is, if you've heard the term. Ah, we've all heard the term. Good. Well, I don't need to talk about it too much then. But we want to bypass our broken places. We want to bypass our vulnerable places. But these are our places where we have a chance to really make ourselves accident prone. So we need to honor deep seeing, in Sanskrit vidya, the opposite of ignorance, avidya, without deep seeing. But deep seeing means seeing everything. And I say in the book, many spiritual and religious organizations completely ignore the darker elements, the fear body, which buries these negative emotions deep inside of us, the shadow self, repressed ideas, instincts, impulses, weaknesses, desires, perversions, traumatic memories, embarrassing fears, and a myriad of small and large humiliations, whatever we don't want to admit to having. So part of our practice in this settling in phase is committing to feeling the suffering or pain that is just part of living with kind attention and compassion, instead of trying to bypass it to get somewhere. So that's part one. That's part one. Part two is, now we've made the commitment to do dot practice and line practice. Line practice is important. Again, my teacher talked about finding your inmost request. I mean, why are you here? Why are you at Upaya? Why are you taking the time tonight to be here? Those of you who are on YouTube, why are you here? Do you have a deep request to open up beyond the limitations of your chattering mind? To have an accident in which your chattering mind falls away? You have that probably if you're here, which is wonderful. That's line practice. We need to keep that aspiration alive. But dot practice is being with what is right now. So that all those dots make up a line, and yet one dot includes all the dots. So the second phase is what I call stumbling toward enlightenment, the hard work phase. And I talk about 5 tools that we can use. The 5 hindrances as portals, The 5 hindrances are craving and greed, restlessness and worry, lethargy and boredom, doubt, aversion, anger, and hatred. Can we look closely at each of those hindrances and see that potentially they are portals, that we can't bypass them? Noticing the emotion, if there's an underlying emotion, or the impulse, if there's an underlying impulse, and just see how it comes, how it intensifies, and then how it dissipates. The sensations, the thoughts that surround each of those hindrances. Watch them as they come up and trace them toward their root. Again, grieving and craving and greed, restlessness and worry, lethargy and boredom, doubt, aversion, anger, and hatred. Even our anger. My first teacher, Suzuki Roshi, had anger issues, but he learned how to just be with them, so they dissipated without him hurting or harming anyone. Just be with them. Recognize and accept, but not stoically, with a big heart and an open mind. And the second practice that I talk about in this book is bringing the aggregates into view, the 5 aggregates. Raise your hands if you are familiar with the 5 aggregates. Again, most of you are. Most of you in the room, at least, are pretty well studied. And you know, in the Heart Sutra, every morning at Zen centers all over the world, we negate the 5 aggregates. But in early Buddhism, and even in modern day Buddhism, bringing the 5 aggregates into view is considered a wonderful practice. And I teach that practice. Usually we're caught by just the 5th aggregate, which is consciousness. Let me review what they are. Maybe some of you on YouTube aren't familiar with them. They are contact, or rupa, form. They are feeling or sensation. They are impulse or mental tendency. They are perception. They are impulse or mental tendency, and they are consciousness. So the first 4 usually get swamped by the 5th one, consciousness, which wants to chatter on and on about what we felt, what we experienced, what our impulse was, and so it gloms them down. It melts them into this false self. But by bringing the aggregates into view, consciousness doesn't have to be dominating anymore. Consciousness could just be a component. The first 4 are always in the present moment. The 5th one is circling around the past, the future, what should have been, might have been, could have been. And that's fine. We need consciousness. It protects us and helps us in many, many ways. But if it dominates, there's no chance for this accident of opening up to big heart mind, to the wonderful enlightened world that's right here now. So that's why there's this ancient practice of bringing them into view in your meditation or in your daily life, very hard in your daily life, but in your meditation. And I talk about that. I also talk about that in relation to the Naga, the serpent king in Buddhism. The Naga who protected Buddha, supposedly. The Nagarjuna, the serpent hero, who is the philosopher king of non-dual Mahayana. Nagarjuna. And so with the aggregates, the fifth aggregate consciousness dominates, chatter, until we slow down and bring them all into view. With the Naga has to shed their skins because they have all these protective skins, protecting them from being hurt, protecting them from being confused, protecting them from being upset. But the Nagas are the champion skin shedders. They know how to shed their skins. Nagarjuna, with his tetralema, is a wonderful skin shedder and teaches many people how to shed their skins of their opinions, their beliefs, the ways they protect themselves by their habits. And each time we shed a skin, I say in my book, even though we're taking a risk, we are taking a risk to shed a skin because those skins protect us from being hurt, and we've been hurt. But each time we shed a skin, we're shedding a belief, a memory, a habit that has given us comfort and security. But as we shed them, one skin at a time, we become more permeable. We become more alive in this moment. We become more intimate with whatever is happening. And that's wonderful that we have that opportunity to be skin shedders. And Nagarjuna and the Nagas teach us how to do that. The Nagas are the serpents in India who become the dragons in China. And they become the dragons in China because the Chinese already had a tradition of dragons, and they were scared to death of snakes. So they changed it from a serpent to a dragon. But it's the same principle. It's becoming malleable. It's becoming available and alive to whatever's happening and not caught by our ideas. One skin at a time, with patience and persistence. The third and fourth paramitas, patience and persistence. The third practice I talk about in my book is mantras, gathas, and malas. And we use them in Zen. My first few years with Suzuki Roshi, I never even heard of us using them. I never even heard what they were. But they help us stay present so we can stumble toward enlightenment. Sometimes we're so flooded, if we're just doing shikantaza, if we're just sitting, we're flooded by some anger, by some emotion, by monkey mind activities. And these practices can really help us, can really open us up. By focusing us a little bit, really focusing us a lot, a whole bunch. So in my book I talk about a lot of mantras and gathas, and malas, of course, are the prayer beads, the 108 prayer beads. And usually when you do prayer beads, you're reciting a mantra or a gatha. And the difference between a mantra and a gatha is that a mantra is just something generally used, where a gatha is situational. And when I was in Bhutan, they were doing, all of the monks and nuns had malas, and they were reciting Om Mani Padme Hum, or however it goes, over and over again. And they would really have worn their malas, really almost worn them down, so those beads were really smooth. So years ago, I was in a Rahatsu sesshin. I was flooded with hopelessness that I could ever let go of I. Hopelessness that I could ever let go of I completely and just be alive the way my teacher seemed to be. Just be enjoying my life the way my teacher seemed to be. And so he said, Tim, you're having a hard time. And I was sweating profusely. It was hot in California, hot. And he said, go change your shirt and then come back and have a doksan with me. So I went and changed my shirt and I came back. And he said, now repeat this mantra. And of course he had me repeat, well, not of course, but he had me repeat the Gate Gate mantra. Gate Gate Para Gate Parasam Gate. And I said, should I repeat one word or all of them? He said, oh, repeat the whole thing, but it's all the same whether you repeat one word or all of it. Because dot practice includes the line. Line practice includes the dot. This is non-dual reality. This is inner being. But it's hard for us because we're caught by all of our skins. We're caught by our consciousness which is trying to protect us. So I did that. And that helped me a lot, I did it while I was eating, I did it while I was sleeping. Well, I couldn't do it while I was sleeping, but while I was going to sleep. When I woke up in the night, I did it. I did it when I was going to the bathroom. I did it for the last 2 days of the sesshin. And it was wonderful. It was wonderful. And also at our Zen Center, I talk to people about creating their own gathas, in addition to using mantras, their own gathas. That was a formal mantra that I had, but there are many informal mantras that you can use. And when I had bad Lyme's disease, and I was the guiding teacher at Zen Center still, at our Zen Center in Minnesota, I had bad Lyme's disease. I couldn't really get out of bed except that I could drive to the lake 3 miles from us. No, excuse me, 3 blocks from us, 3 or 4 blocks from us. Seemed like 3 miles when I tried to walk there with my Lyme's disease. And I had a gatha that I made up when I looked at the lake. Looking at Bide Makaska, that's the name of the lake, seeing my true nature and its reflection, heart, mind at peace. And then I simplified that, because gathas like to be simplified. Looking, seeing, peace. Looking, seeing, peace. So every day I would drive to the lake. Looking, seeing, peace. Looking, seeing, peace. And that helped me a lot. Helped me open up to the accident that lies when we let go of our toing and froing and our shoulding and should notting, and just be present in this wonderful universe. And the fourth practice that I talk about is seated meditation. But I'm not going to talk about that today, because you know about that. But I have a chapter on focused meditation, a chapter on bare awareness meditation, and a chapter on shikantaza, don't know meditation. I mean, I have a third of a chapter on each of those, a third of a chapter on each of those. In bare awareness meditation, it seems like shikantaza, but we make a lot of effort. In shikantaza, we don't need to make any effort at all. We can just be, as my second teacher said, Katagiri Roshi, Tim, just do stupid zaza. And any time I would start to make progress, he'd say, and I wonder how much progress I would be making. He said, Tim, just do stupid zazen. That's what shikantaza is. So there's those three different wonderful meditative practices that we can try. They complement each other. They complement each other. The fifth practice I talk about is immersion in nature. We're the Zen school of Buddhism. Because of Taoism, when Buddhism entered China, all of a sudden there was real appreciation of nature. In India, not so much in the sutras, but in China, love for nature, appreciation of nature, coming from the early Taoism. You know how when we're in nature, now I know you guys out of Paya are in nature. I don't know about you guys online, but nature is all around us, even in a city. We have a lake or a park or a tree or a leaf or a ladybug or a whole swarm of ladybugs. That can slow us down. That can open us up. That can make us just feel a wonderful freedom in here and not be caught by should-haves, would-haves, could-haves. We don't need that stuff. A little bit of it, but not so much. Not so much. Because we're able just to enjoy being. The Taoists called that Wu Wei, being, non-being. And I consider Zen to be Chan to be an amalgamation of Taoism and Buddhism. Well, many other people do too. Nature. When I was a boy growing up in California, we went to the Sierras every year. My father took us. And John Muir, who was one of the original pioneers who hiked through all the Sierras, my father carried his little green book. And John Muir knew how to commune with nature. He said, between any two pine trees, there is a door leading to a new way of life. Between any two sand dunes, there is a door leading to a new way of life. Nature helps us, reminds us that we're always interconnected to everyone and everything. Always, always supported by and supporting everyone and everything. Even if we don't act like it, even if they don't act like it, it's there. It's there. D.T. Suzuki, the first Suzuki, has a whole chapter in one of his books on divine wildness. To that connecting to, not separate from. And Dogen says, to fully enter the mountains is to fully enter the mountains. To fully enter the mountains is to fully enter the swamps. Sorry about that, but it is. It's to fully enter the swamps. The swampiness of your own scared nature. Entering that. There are mountains hidden in mountains. There are mountains hidden in swamps, says Dogen. Right in the middle of that swamp, if we're just there, if we just breathe and open our heart mind, the mountain supports us. The mountain supports us. And this is the absolute freedom in nature of letting our maps go. That's the absolute freedom and meditation of letting our maps go. As my teacher said, if you want to tame your sheep or your cow, give it a large pasture. My first teacher. I was lucky to have several teachers, and I do talk about them in this book. My root teacher, though, was Suzuki Roshi when I was a young man. So the 5 practices I just outlined, opening through the hindrances, bringing the aggregates into view, mantra work, seated meditation, and just being in nature, are all help us stumble toward enlightenment. And it's very good to have a spiritual community, a sangha, to use as a rock tumbler. when we're doing all these practices. We think we can go off and just be a Pratyeka Buddha or a Shravaka. Well, you can do that, but it's the rock tumbler that smooths your edges and prepares you to open up to big heart mind. And that means we're going to make mistakes. That means we will do those, make lots of mistakes, because when we're in a group, the group consciousness affects us, and we're worried about doing something to kind of interfere with what the group is up to, or sometimes you just want to get away from the group. When I lived at Tassajara, we always wanted to go to town trips. Once a week we had a town trip. Everybody would compete to go to town trips. To get away from the rock tumbler just for a while. I don't know what it's like for you guys at Upaya. That was what it was like at Tassajara. So we'll make mistakes. We want to know things. We think we know things, and we contract around what we know, and that hardens our neurons. But as a psychologist, I've studied all kinds of research on neuroplasticity. The baby has neuroplasticity. Through meditation, we develop the neuroplasticity that we once had. Our hardening of our neurons softens and relaxes. It's pretty wonderful, but it takes patience and persistence. And practice. This means holding with kind awareness and curiosity our private parts, rather than just pushing them away. Of course, we don't want to show others our private parts too much. That's okay. But once we develop some comfort with them ourselves, we're okay showing them to others. It's good to show others that we may make mistakes, that we have flaws. Suzuki always talked about his absent-mindedness. Not always, but often. That was his flaws, absent-mindedness. He said Zen masters aren't supposed to be absent-minded. Supposed to, right? Supposed to. Zen masters are Zen masters. Let's just be who we are. You don't have to be a Zen master, just be who you are. Then you're a Zen master. Do you understand a little bit? I think you might understand. Each rejected aspect, I say in my book, within our shadow carries within it the seed of wisdom. It is waiting to show us something important about ourselves. But this feels quite perilous, as it requires us to see things we don't want to see, accept the unacceptable, and embrace the deplorable. The wisdom of the shadow is about manifesting wholeness and balance. What Dogen called whole being Buddha nature. Whole being Buddha nature. And I don't have a lot of time, so I think part 3, falling awake, I'll just leave that up to you to do. You will do that. That will happen on its own if you do the stuff I'm talking about. Your body and mind will fall away too. And that's the dichotomy between body and mind. That's not some big ephemeral experience. That's just some big mystical experience. That's the dichotomy. We divide the world up into either or. But it's all both and. It's all both and. It's all inner being. It's all dependent co-origination, dependent co-dying and getting born, and dying and getting born. I call this dancing with Nagarjuna's tetralemma. I'm suffering, I'm not suffering, I'm suffering and I'm not suffering. I'm neither suffering nor not suffering. And I actually have taught some of my students to do that dance, but they feel awkward doing it. But that's okay, you just do it. Just do it. Just do it. And I can explain that. That sounds just intellectual, but it's really pragmatic. Pragmatic. My very awareness of my suffering means that I'm not suffering. I wouldn't be aware of it. So I'm suffering and I'm not suffering. And both. I can hold them both and then let go of them. So now I want to see. Now, do I have time for Q&A or not? Are we done?
Yeah, thank you, Tim. We have about 7 minutes. If
Oh,
anyone
okay.
wants to
Okay.
ask a question,
Okay.
and I'm also here on YouTube with 45 people there watching. If anybody would like to put a question in the chat for Tim.
Or a comment if you'd like. Anything. Anything. And is that a noble silence, or is that a hesitant to speak silence, or is that a trying to be good silence, or is that I'm bored and I want to get out of here silence?
Usually it takes a little time for people to
Okay.
really
All right.
connect with something. And then also there's a bit of a delay on the YouTube feed. So sometimes people won't
Okay.
hear what you're saying for a few
Okay.
seconds, but yeah, we can see.
Okay.
Actually, I have a question, Tim,
Sure.
about that. You kind of hinted at the beginning, but the phrase itself, enlightenment is an accident, but practice makes you accident prone. We hear about that a lot in Zen circles, and you kind of hinted that it might come from somewhere, but do you know exactly where that came from?
Oh, well, we had a big debate, my publisher and me, and a couple of other people, and we think it came from Krishnamurti, Jiddu Krishnamurti. We think, we're not sure. We decided it didn't come from Aiken Roshi, although some people were arguing for that. We decided it didn't come from Suzuki Roshi, although some people were arguing for that. And we settled on Jiddu Krishnamurti, but we don't know. But anyway, wherever it came from, it's true. It's true. If you engage in this practice wholeheartedly, with tenderness and wholeheartedness, not trying to get something, but really giving yourself to it, you're making yourself accident prone. And the accident is the accident of total death and total rebirth just in this, just in this, on each moment. Not some just big Kensho experience, but on each moment. Kensho's experiences are little, great, little ones and big ones, but then we want another one. And instead of doing our dot practice, we're caught by where's the best cup? I want the best cup. I thought I had the best cup. I want it back. Suzuki, you hid that from me. Give me that best cup back. They're all the best cup.
Yeah, kind of along the lines of what you're saying right now. Someone in the chat on YouTube, at first people said many thanks and bowing and very grateful, and then someone has asked, please explain enlightenment. Uh, please explain enlightenment in the way you used it tonight. So, what exactly do you mean by enlightenment? What are we prone to with these practices that you laid out for us tonight?
Uh-huh. We're prone to living with an incredible lightness and appreciation of life regardless of what happens. A lightness which doesn't negate darkness, which which enjoys darkness. We're prone to falling into that sense of lightness of being, which becomes just our lives. And so we enlighten others not by preaching to them, but just by hanging out with them. Just by hanging out with them. And we have to go through endarkenment, real endarkenment. And I talk about that in one of my last chapters in my book. We have to embrace endarkenment to see, to feel the light that just emanates from the darkness. Always, always, always.
Thank you so much, Tim. It looks like we might have a question from the Zendo.
Sure. Hi. I see a question from the Zendo. Please go ahead.
Hi, this is Henry. I'm wondering how your experience of being a teacher and giving Dharma talks and writing about practice has informed or changed your practice.
Did you say your name is Henry? I'm sorry. Henry? Oh, that's interesting. I've never really thought about that. I just do my thing. But I think that over the years, my teacher said that when I was a younger teacher, I was a tiger. Now I'm a pussycat. I think that has kind of happened to me. I don't know if it was better to be a tiger. I still a tiger sometimes, but I think that's changed somewhat. Also, I've really gotten into the last 20 years the intellectual side of Buddhism and Zen. I never knew I was going to write all these books, but Buddhism is beautiful descriptions of how to live deeply, and so I think those are two changes: is that I've become lighter myself and more pussycat-like, to use my teacher's phrase. The other is that I'm always curious about the texts and how the texts can illuminate our way of living more lightly. And so here I've been creating my own texts with some real pleasure.